Our next guest on the Beyond the Flags podcast is an interesting character. He started his career in micro sprints, eventually graduating to sprint cars and racing midgets, but 2023, he decided to go IMCA Modified racing. That guest is Jeff Westergard. He's here to tell us about his journey so far, as well as all the fun he's been having, his long road trip to Arizona, and some of his results so far in his early Friesen Performance IMCA Modified career. Jeff Westergard out of Seawoolley, Washington is our next guest. Well, we're back here on the Beyond the Flags podcast, and representing the state of Washington, specifically the city of Seawoolley, he competes in the Friesen Performance IMCA Modified. Jeff Westergard. Jeff, great to have you on here. Really looking forward to this because you and I have known each other for a while, but it hasn't been through modified racing. It's been through some other open wheel stuff. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, excited to be on here.
Well, I guess we'll just first talk about it. We'll talk about the elephant in the closet, so to speak. Last year, it was around the time Survive the 55. Into the season, Skagit Speedway hosting their $10,000 to win modified race, and Jeff Westergard is entered in this show, and that one just kind of took me by surprise, deciding to become a modified driver.
Yeah, talk about last minute, huh? I actually raced full-time with the Northwest Focus Midgets last year, and then I filled in some sprint car and some mini sprint stuff last year too, and then a couple of years ago I watched the Survive the 55, and it was the most incredible race I've seen in a long time. And they're going 3 and 4 wide and just like slicing and dicing, and it was just a spectacular show. I was like, man, I got to try to drive one of these things. Well, I got a wild hair at my butt like the week of the Survive 55. I'm like, man, I'm going to try to find one by the end of the week. Mm-hmm. I had a buyer for my midget. I sold my midget on like Tuesday and had the money for like 2 days and sent one of my buddies down to Oregon, like Albany, Oregon, to go pick up a car that I did some research on through some friends because I didn't know anything about modifieds, but did some research through some friends, bought it sight unseen with my buddy. He checked it out. Everything was good, brought it up. I think I got it at like 9:30 at night on Thursday and bolted my seat in it and tried to figure out what to even do and how to start it and things like that, and showed up on Friday ready to race.
Just incredible. And that edition last year was wild and wacky, with the basically 2-day format squished into one, trying to beat the rain. And man, it's a good thing they got it in all in that one day, because the forecast was looking like the whole thing could have got washed out. So you got to give, no doubt, props and kudos to Skagit Speedway for Mel Decker for keeping that thing going and not pulling out, because there were so many people from all over the place that traveled to that venue.
Yeah, and luckily I only live like a few minutes away, but I put a lot of time and effort into it the night before, so I was stoked that they were getting it in. It was a long night for me. I showed up as a rookie it was my first race in a modified, and I'm like, hey, can I get a couple laps or hot lap sessions being a rookie? Nope, you're in the big show. This is it. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's cool that you mentioned that story of you watched the first Survive the 55 in 2022, because you're not the first person that's had that same reaction. There's some, I'm from the sprint car world, predominantly the last couple years. And then, some of my sprint car friends, Mel Roberts, for instance, was one. He was just watching while, that was the weekend. I'm sure you remember Jason Solwald was racing in the sportsman sprints, and he wrenches for Solwald for Mike Anderson's team. And he's like, you guys they were like all loaded up and, just ready for the crowd to come by and, just kind of winding down for the night. And he's like, you guys got to come see this. This is insane. They're like running the top and like they're ripping this place. And then they all got out, and then, it's like, wow, these are exciting to watch. And it's nothing against any of the local competition or anything. I just felt like it brought things to a next level deal. You have a high paying race, and you got, you have the Shaw Race Cars Western Region champion come in Ty Clemens all the way from Montana, and you have drivers from all over creation come in to take on, Tyson Blood and Rick Smith and some of the gassers in Washington.
Yeah, it was, I went there. I think I went there the first year to watch for the Sportsman Sprint Showdown, because it was also a cool race that we had going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I should say 90% of my friends and people I've grown up racing with are all in sprint cars, right?
Yeah.
I've had a couple that have gone to modifieds, and I enjoy watching them, but I didn't, like, the racing was kind of so-so. And then I saw that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how they were doing what they were doing. I mean, honestly, like, I've never seen a modified run the top of the track like that. I mean, banging the right rear off the wall, like you see Kyle Larson doing a late model now. It was just an incredible race.
Well, what I took from it was, I went to that year, 2022. I went to the mid-season race. It was the Mod Speed Week, well, the IMCA Wild West Shootout, because it's 3 divisions now, came and gone. They ended at Elma, and I had nothing going on, and decided to go up there and hang out with some friends. And I'd never been to Skagit before, because there was really no reason for me to go. Any series that I worked for never went there or anything. And I remember messaging Caleb Hart, like, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Do you mind if you need help? Like, I can announce the modifieds for it. And he's like, oh yeah, no, go for it. I just remember watching them, just the how it's weird, because I'm like, all right, this guy, he's going to hammer down and he's going to thread the needle, and then guys would just back out on the right at certain points of the track, and I'm like, oh boy, seems like the car's unloading early or something. And I think there's just guys getting used to it, getting comfortable and everything. And I remember saying, Mel Decker had hired me actually the night before or a couple days before I even came up there. And so it was for me to get a chance to see, okay, who are the local guys here? I know that Tyson races here, and I remember Rick Smith from the days with Northern Sprint Tour in the Black 28 car and things of that nature. And I just was like telling everybody, Pete and John and Caleb, like, man, you're not going to believe, that survived the 50th. It's going to be outstanding. It's going to be great. It's going to be huge, Donald Trump kind of thing. And first night, like first heat race, it was like, it wasn't the best race. We'll just put it that way. Like, there was like, I'm like, holy smokes. And then all these people are like, I thought you said this was, what is this? And I'm like, no, don't worry. It's going to get a lot better. It eventually did. And I think that was some of the out-of-towners adjusting to Skagit, as well as some of the locals adjusting to, these guys drive a lot different. They might drive, in the sense of, some of them are super on the wheel aggressive. Others are, you've been a racer your whole life. Once you're comfortable racing with people, you can predict. But when you get with a group of people, you have no idea what they're capable of in certain situations. Like, you go 3 wide stair-step formation. I don't know what the guy in the bottom is going to do. He could wreck us all. So,
yeah, that was the biggest thing coming in too for me. Like, I will touch on one thing. I've been a sprint car guy my whole life. Sprint cars, mini sprints, midgets, and I got the hot lap one of Mel Decker's cars for like 2 sessions the year before. Actually, it was that first year they survived. I got the hot lap when they did those practice nights during the week.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. We showed some good speed in it right off the bat. And then I showed up to this race with this car that I'd never even done anything with. I had to ask somebody how to start it and put it in gear. I didn't understand any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were absolutely terrible in hot laps and heat race. If I remember right, it was 2 heat races.
Mm-hmm.
And I did terrible in both heat races. I started like second to last in the B main, and I started just making laps and picking people off. I'm like, man, this ain't so bad. And I ended up going from 15th in the B to 5th in the B, spun myself out all by myself, and then went back to 16th, and then got back up to 4th somehow, and just held that spot. Actually, it was one of my best friends, Ben Gunderson. He was in 3rd. I'm like, there's no way I'm taking both of us out of the show. I'm just going to park myself right here and sit on the bottom.
Yeah.
And so we made the show, and then they pushed everything in all into that one night and everything. And I didn't even have a pit cart. I didn't have anything set up. I had like 1 fuel jug or something for fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to figure out how to pit in the middle. We ended up having other people pitch in and bring fuel jugs, and we got in the middle. And I think I started like 23rd in the A, and somehow got up to 9th. Somebody spun out in front of me, took me out, and I had to go back to the back. I got back up to 13th. But it was like, you could really trust those guys to get in there and race. And I was like, man, this is going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, turns out that, it was an accident because I went down to Yuma and got my butt kicked.
Well, I was going to bring note to that. Like, all of a sudden, I'm just, I'm sitting, where I'm at. You drove past me every day. I'm hanging out, waiting to catch people for heat race interviews. And I'm like, wait a minute. There, I know that and then I had heard the name. I'm like, wait a minute. I know that we got, Tyson comes down here, Austin Rogland, and come down and everything. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then I think a day or two later, I caught up with you and did an interview with you for IMCA TV. And I mean, the cool thing I took away from that is that, sure, the amount of competition that's there and everything is huge, as you saw. But it seemed like you were having a good time, and it was a great learning experience for you of just, like, soaking it all in and going to, like, I think even a step above the Survive the 55 when it comes to car for car. Like, you've got national champions in your heat race, and you've got regional champions, state champions, track champions all over the place. So not to take away from Survive the 55, that event is definitely quickly becoming a crown jewel in the Shaw Race Cars Western region.
Oh, yeah. So I ended up doing one race after the Survive the 55 at Elma. It was their season championship night, and we seemed to do pretty good there. But, like, I just couldn't get comfortable in this car. It just drives so different. It feels broken to anything I'm used to. So, like,
sure.
A sprint car, you're all driving off your left rear. You have this super big heavy tie down on your left rear, and the car leans left when you go into the corner. Well, these cars are, like, balled up on the right front, and it's like, to be honest with you, I thought I was going to flip the whole entire Survive the 55 because the car rears up so high.
Like taking a sports car on a windy road, sort of.
Yeah, it was just nothing I've ever done. And it literally scared me when I sent it into one of the corners on the higher side. I'm like, okay, I'm going to flip. Because when a sprint car feels like that, you go into the wall and you flip.
Yeah.
But that's what these things kind of feel like. And once I got used to it, like later on, it doesn't bother me now, but I decided that we really needed to get some time in. Skagit has a pretty short season. I needed to learn how to drive this car. I love racing. I love racing a lot of races throughout the year. I think I ran 46 races or something last season between everything. And I decided, I talked to the wife, we probably shouldn't have done it financially, but we really needed to get practice to make it make sense to run up here full time. So we decided, me, my wife, and my 7-month-old baby at the time, ended up buying an $1,800 camper to save on hotel costs that were going to cost $3,000. And we cruised down there and stayed in the pits, and it was literally just me, her, and the baby the entire week. Luckily, Tyson Blood and Austin Rogman and Kevin, I can't remember Kevin's last name, but Kevin was down. Oh, Kevin Ballin.
Yeah.
So we kind of had like a little local section in the pits there, and like my hat's off to those guys. Tyson Blood's family, like the most incredible family to race against, compete against. Like, those guys are so much help. I literally couldn't even be doing any of this without the help that they gave down there and the friendship that we had, and obviously carries on throughout this season too. Like, that family is the biggest help ever. Going forward through the week, we ended up getting, I'm a social butterfly, right? So I like talking to everybody. I made friends with Gray Ferrando and Devin Reed and all these guys from Oregon. And they all really kind of took me in and just like, hey, why don't you do this? Or, hey, like, I saw you in this race. I know that you're a sprint car guy, but maybe you should try doing this a little bit. And we just like kind of really honed in what the car was supposed to be doing and what I'm supposed to be doing, and stopped trying to fight it. And so like I think it was 10 nights and 12 days or something down there.
It's a spree, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was like the most work I've ever done in my life, but the most rewarding ever. I mean, obviously we didn't have the performance or the track positioning that we would like to have as a racer, but we knew going down there that we were just going to get our butt kicked all week long, or for the whole 2 weeks, but using it as ammo when we come up here to be fast.
Well, you mentioned Gray Ferrando. He's a great asset to the sport, and something that he told me several years ago, I did an interview with him about, the question was, what is something that you do that people normally wouldn't think you do? Like, do you volunteer for a charity, or do you, are you a first responder, or things like that. And his response was one of the greatest ones. He's like, I like to help new racers. Not to, and the reason for that choice that he makes is to make them better, because it makes racing safer. If everybody just kind of held their cards close, it's like, I'll just give you a piece of information. Where, there's some teams, they're an open book. The tech support you get from your chassis builder, right, is ask me whatever you need. What adjustments, we'll give you suggestions of adjustments, or, play things off of each other kind of deal. And it makes racing better. It makes it safer. It makes it more enjoyable. It makes it more watchable. More people want to get involved. More people want to go watch. I mean, it's a full circle thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's actually funny you say that, because I've actually stayed in contact with Gray, because we've been trying to figure out a little more setup stuff, because we had some setup stuff down there. That's a half-mile baby smooth track, not as banked as like what we're used to here, where we're slamming the front ends on the ground. And I was talking to him about some of that stuff, and then talking to him with, just some situations and things that I've gotten into racing locally here. And he goes, hey, you know what? Why don't you reach out to them and help them, like, with their cars, see if there's anything you can do. It's kind of funny you say that, because I didn't even know about that interview, and that was the first thing he suggested. Yeah.
And I mean, it's true, right? I mean, like, if you go to Speedway Motors IMCA Super Nationals fueled by Casey's, and, there's somebody running there the same chassis that you are, there's a chance that, I mean, right moment, of course, there's always a time and place, but you can... very approachable people to where, or you can actually talk to the people that built your actual race car, because they're on manufacturer's row, and it's all to make the sport better, which I love. And of course, safety is a number one thing. Sure, modifieds don't flip. Modified stock cars, sport mods, they're not supposed to flip really at all. But
oh yeah, weird.
But they do, right? Things happen, whether with some assistance or unassisted. But yeah, no. And I think it makes it great. I really love that Skagit went sanctioned, and all of a sudden you're seeing all sorts of different people show up. You're running the same set of rules. You can go to Texas. You can go to Clash on the Coast in Florida. You can run the NY Penn Series in Pennsylvania and New York. You can race in Michigan, all over Iowa, any day of the week that you want, and you don't have to change a thing. That's just the person of liking order and uniformity.
I didn't even know about any of the I knew about IMCA, but I didn't even know about any of what IMCA is until I got into it. And so, starting to put schedules together and things like that for this year, there was 107 races I could run between Washington and Oregon, and there was 57 of those races didn't have an overlap. So you could actually physically run 57 races just in Washington and Oregon this year. Mm-hmm. I was like, holy crap. And then I started digging a little deeper and learning down in Yuma, you can run for a national championship and never leave Washington and Oregon.
Sure.
I didn't know that was an actual thing where you could get national points. You could battle a guy on the East Coast and never race him and get national championship points and beat him or lose to him or whatever. I thought they really have their stuff figured out when it comes to that, the points and structure. That's really cool.
Well, and what I like too is you race however much you want to race. There's people that race just one track, and that's totally fine. It's either what fits in their budget, or, you have instances from the sprint car world, Brian Brown, it's we only race these certain times or these certain places because the sponsors. If I go elsewhere, I lose my funding. Obviously work is a big thing and stuff like that. Then there's people that, I just bounce between these two tracks, or there's guys that just say, I just really want to run for a state championship. Then there's guys that up the game a little bit and they go for a regional championship. And then you have guys that are just racing their tails off and going for a national championship. So it's whatever you kind of want to do kind of deal.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. My wife last year, the last 2 years we've raced quite a bit, and she didn't grow up around racing or anything. I'm the first person that's been in her life that raced and stuff, and I actually took a break, and after I met her, I got back into racing. So when I had originally met her, we were not racing. We were going camping and fishing and doing whatever.
Sure.
And I think we raced like 43 races 2 years ago and 46 last year. And she's like, I took a couple hard tumbles last year, and she goes, hey, we were debating back and forth whether we wanted to go sprint car racing or modified racing. I definitely wanted more horsepower. I wanted the setback feel for me personally. And then she was like, why don't we go modified racing? They don't flip. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then sprint car racing, we couldn't afford to do sprint car racing without sponsors. We have really good partners. We have really good help. But like without them, we would have to park the car. Well, whereas with the modified, I mean, this year it's kind of turning into a little different thing. But with the modified, we feel like we could take a hold of it a little better with maybe not such big, huge dollar sponsors to get through the year. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, and then we can, maybe race a little less. I'm like, yeah, not a problem. And then I put in the schedule together. I'm like, babe, there's 57 races we could do here. And then we went to Yuma and all that stuff too. So yeah, it's cool.
Are you looking to find that adrenaline rush, but you can't because you're not at the racetrack? Well, check out the IMCA TV Replay subscription library to have access to thousands of hours of racing for just $24.99 a month. Relive all the moments of the Speedway Motors IMCA Super Nationals fueled by Casey's at Boone Speedway, the Harris Clash at Deer Creek Speedway in Spring Valley, Minnesota, the IMCA TV Winter Nationals at Cocopah Speedway in Somerton, Arizona, Florida's Clash on the Coast, and dozens of Speedway Motors IMCA weekly racing program racetracks from across the nation, as well as the IMCA TV Dirtcast podcast. Plus, 25% of that $24.99 monthly fee goes towards the Drivers Point Fund and is a great way to help out your local racers. In 2023, over $97,000 was paid out to IMCA drivers directly at over 50 racetracks across the country. Please note that live broadcasts are not part of the replay subscription. That's IMCA TV. IMCA TV, where America comes to watch racing. Something that I was going to ask you is, for you, your start in racing. First time I really remember you racing, and correct me if I'm wrong on my timeline here, or the pairing, was the Simmons Motorsports 9 at Grays Harbor. Gosh, that was probably maybe like 2000. Well, actually, no, I think you were in a sportsman sprint too. Didn't you run like a crate sprint with the Northwest Extreme?
So I have ran every single kind of sprint car. I have not run a sprint car on asphalt, but I've ran a midget on asphalt. But I've ran every single kind of sprint car and mini sprint and everything other than a quarter midget, a junior sprint, an open midget, and a 410. I've ran everything else. I've ran 360 winged, wingless, sportsman, 600s, 1200s, midgets. I have a hard time saying no because I love racing so much. Sure. So anytime I get an opportunity, I jump in.
Yeah.
So like I started racing in 04 or 05. I think it was 04. I had a dirt bike. My dad's girlfriend at the time, her son was racing quarter midgets, 250 micro sprints up at Deming. And we went up and watched them one time. I'm like, Dad, I got to do this. He goes, well, you're 14, 15. You're going to have to figure it out. I'm not paying for it. I'm like, okay, perfect. Found one online. Wally Hoyt had a 250 micro sprint up for sale. I sent him a picture of my dirt bike and I said, will you trade? He goes, yeah, let's do it. I traded him my dirt bike for 250 micro sprint and off we went. And I remember making the fuel lines. Like we had no idea about anything. We made the fuel lines up. My dad worked for Walton Beverage. They were out of like the CO2 lines out of the back of the service department there at the Pepsi plant. And like, it was not good. Like I don't think we even greased bars or anything. And we went out racing, and it was cool racing with my dad. Like I said, I don't know what we learned or what we didn't learn that year, but I'd say it was pretty good. We didn't win any races. I think we probably maybe finished in the top 10 a couple times. Like we weren't super competitive, but I got lucky and got picked up the next year just strictly on hanging out with another team and becoming friends with them. They picked me up and said, hey, we see something in you. We want to give you a shot. And they put me in a 600. And we had a pretty good year, but like my second year of racing was in the 600, and my class was Trey Starks, Logan Forler, Jared Peterson. I think Seth Bergman might have been up there at the time. Colton Heath was up there. Like, I had everybody everybody that has made a name for themselves in the state of Washington
Sure.
was in my 600 class.
Some fast,
So it was
fast
like,
cats, yeah.
yeah, it was like the hardest 600, or it was the hardest competition ever.
Yeah.
And I mean, we ran pretty good. We didn't win any races at Deming, but I think we ended up winning some at like Salem and stuff like that. But it just kind of progressed from there, jumping into different kind of cars and getting an opportunity to drive a Sportsman. And I don't really know like what really took off or where it took off, but I literally ended up racing for like Ron Brown. I drove for John Simmons at Elma. I raced for Ron Brown down in Oregon with his wingless car, and Jerry Schramm in his limited sprints, and everything here in between that.
Man, yeah. And it just seemed like that was yesterday when all that happened. But here we must be having fun, right? So.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely live and eat and breathe this stuff, and I forgot what it was like when I was out of it for a few years, enjoying everything else in my life, and now I'm like, yeah, no, we don't need any of that.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't, I didn't serve in the military, so nobody take offense to this, but kind of like you're in the service, right? Or you're deployed, and then you go back to civilian life. It's like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Yeah, it was. I didn't realize how much time I didn't have until I didn't race, and then now that I'm right back into racing, I feel like I never even skipped a beat. Like I've just devoted everything I have into this.
Yeah, no, I've been there, and I agree with you. And it's an opportunity to kind of, I wouldn't say appreciate it more, because you always appreciate it, but you know what I mean. It's like you almost lost something, and it's like, oh my gosh, that wasn't fun.
Yeah. And now, like, I'm so far back into it. I really have a firm belief in, I don't just jump into other kinds of cars and race as much as I can just because of the fun. I honestly, truly believe that the more you race, the better you are. Mm-hmm. And it just hones in your skills. So like, I really try to race anything and everything as much as I can, just to simply be the best that I can personally be. I might not be the best on the racetrack or the best in whatever, but I know that I'm just putting as much energy and time in as that I can. So, when I'm racing my own car, I'm as sharp and fluent as I can be in that car.
Well, number 66, what's the story behind that? Is there any significance in the number that you ran for your modified?
So 66 was my football number in high school. I picked that number because that was the year my dad was born.
Okay.
I was an offensive and defensive lineman, and we had to pick numbers. I'm like, I'll pick 66 because that's the year my dad was born. And I did that up until I didn't play football my senior year because of racing, or I think I played my junior year, but I didn't play my senior year because of racing, and I just carried the 66 through that. And so any of my cars or my family cars have always been number 66.
Okay, well that's good. Hey, that's a good year. That's one of my favorite years when it comes to music. I mean, that was when things, it was the beginning of psychedelic era, and Motown was hitting good, and I mean, but that's the music lover in me. So,
yeah.
So for you and your family, obviously racing is a major part of it, but what do you guys like to do when you're not working on racing projects? You're not proposing schedules to your wife of, look, I know we raced 46 times last year. We could race 57, but we could travel to some cool places. What do you guys like to do?
My wife really likes going to the lake. We live next to Lake Whatcom, so we're like a mile away from it, and it's like one of the nicest lakes in Skagit Whatcom County area.
Okay.
And so when we get off work, we try to take the boat over there and go just float around in the lake and swim and enjoy the sun and family time. We got into backpacking a few years ago and haven't really done it since we started racing again. But I'm a big snowmobiler. During the winter, I ride almost as much as I race. I mean, we ride 50 times a year probably. My whole race team is actually kind of revolved around snowmobiling friends, and like my crew is snowmobiling people. Like half the people that have sponsored me in the last few years have all been snowmobile people. Like snowmobiling has kind of been a big part of our life, but that's during the winter too. So it's worked out to be able to continue to do that.
Well, I've had the luxury of spending some time in not necessarily Sedro-Woolley, but like the Burlington Mount Vernon area. For people that have never been specifically to Sedro-Woolley, or you can even mention Burlington and Mount Vernon in this answer, what are some things that people definitely want to check out and not miss out on?
I have traveled. That was another thing I didn't touch on earlier. I traveled with the Outlaws. Like I got to see a lot of the country, not racing, but working for a team. I got to see a lot of the country. I've been to a lot of cool places, and Skagit Valley itself has always brought me back. This place is like the most beautiful place in the entire world. I mean, you can go fishing out in the San Juan Islands. You could take a whale watching boat out of the San Juan Islands, go check out Deception Pass Bridge. You could go water skiing in a lake. You could go fish the rivers. You could go camping up in the mountains. You could go snowmobiling or skiing. Like everything's within like 45 minutes of Burlington. Mm-hmm. And like, if you're a nature lover, this place is awesome. Like fishing isn't as good as it used to, but I like fishing just for the simple fact of, throwing the pole out in the water and being in the nature, being in nature and just enjoying like peace and solitude out there. So I'd say hiking and recreational like fishing and hunting and things like that is this place has a lot to offer.
Well, and if you're not in the outdoor stuff, the city, it's not too far away. Seattle, there's always something going on there, and you're not too far from the border either.
No, actually, my wife has some family in Canada, and she went up there she went up there on Saturday before the races. She was up in Canada at a wedding party, something or other. I can't remember what you call it, but she was up there for some family celebrations and then came to the racetrack. We're so close.
Well, I've loved this conversation, and I'm glad that you've got an opportunity to tell your story of where you came from and what you're all about, and how much you're also enjoying the IMCA world, which is an amazing world for people that aren't well versed in it. And I know that you've mentioned time and again all the important people of your crew and your family that make this all possible. As we kind of wrap things up here, any individuals, and by all means, feel free to mention them again, or some of your sponsors and marketing partners that have made everything possible for this season.
Yeah, so I'll start off with my team. I got Jonathan, Emmanuel, Eric, Kaylee. Those guys and Brian, they put in so much time when they can to get my car to the track in the best form it can be every week. Keep it in tip-top shape during the races. My wife lets me do this. Like, she's an incredible supporter of mine. My kids help me clean the car, do that kind of stuff. My parents are super involved. My mom, my stepdad, my dad, my stepmom, they're all super involved with my racing. And then as far as my partners and sponsors go, I got Washington Spray Foam. He came on this year. He's been a huge part of the team this year. Amazing person. Always brings his kids over to the race car. Skagit Transmission's been with me for a few years. Speed Mart has been on board with me for as long as I can remember racing. They've always supported me. Mel Becker Racing took a chance on me this year, and he's been helping me put my car back together after my bad flip down in Elma. TM Anderson Law Firm, those guys followed me through the Midgets and up into my modified now and really support. Nelson Associates, Cascade Pizza, our family company, Westergard Dirtworks, Ian Mintz, we call him the broccoli guy. He's in automated harvesting, does like robotics in the harvesting world. He's actually letting us run our race team out at the shop now. Prime Times Design Northwest, the Tyson Bud family, they've put so much time and energy into my race program. Like, I can't say thank you enough to those guys. Gray Ferrando helped me out. Ben Gunderson has been in the modifieds for a few years up here locally. He's one of my best friends. He's like a brother to me. My car's been up at his house getting new body like every few races and trying to help me get through this and teach me as much as he can. So he's been a huge support to our team. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anybody. I think that's pretty much it. I'm sorry if I missed anybody else, but we have a ton of support emotionally, physically, and financially with this team that we can't do it without them.
Well, it's been great catching up with you, and I really look forward to possibly seeing you a bit more this year. Maybe you guys will be making some trips to Oregon, but I'm really looking forward to see how your IMCA career is going to go, and I think it's going to be a wonderful journey.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Well, race fans, that does it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you continue to enjoy these upcoming interviews. We appreciate it if you would like and subscribe wherever you're listening, whether it's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever it's at. Give us a like and give us a subscription so that we can deliver more of these great interviews to you for your listening pleasure. In the meantime, wherever we're at, wherever you're listening, we hope you have a great rest of your day and a pleasant evening, and we will see you soon here at Highside Racing Promotions. Before we let everybody go, here's the upcoming schedule on IMCA TV of live pay-per-view events. Tuesday, May 14th, Clay County Fair Speedway in Spencer, Iowa will be hosting racing action. Wednesday night, tune on in at Stuart International Speedway for Wednesday, May 15th in Stuart, Iowa. Thursday, we'll have a pair of races. Algona, Iowa's Kossuth County Speedway, and also Park Jefferson International Speedway in Jefferson, South Dakota. Friday, May 17th, we'll have a loaded card of options. Davenport Speedway in Iowa, Mandan, North Dakota's Dakota Speedway, Murray County Speedway in Slayton, Minnesota, Black Hills Speedway in Rapid City, South Dakota, and Wairika Speedway in California. Saturday programming will include Crystal Motor Speedway in Michigan, Iowa's Boone Speedway, also in the Hawkeye State, Makokata Speedway, Eagle Raceway in Nebraska, North Central Speedway in Brainerd, Minnesota, Grays Harbor Raceway in Elma, Washington, Harlan, Iowa's Shelby County Speedway, Southern Oklahoma Speedway in Ardmore, Oklahoma, Electric City Speedway, Great Falls, Montana, Cottage Grove Speedway in Oregon, California's Bakersfield Speedway, and Wairika Speedway, north of the border action at Estevan Motor Speedway, Mojave Valley Raceway in Bullhead City, Arizona. Closing out the weekend on Sunday, May 19th, Benton County Speedway in Benton, Iowa. Also in Iowa, Dubuque Fairground Speedway, Nodak Speedway in Minot, North Dakota, and Clay County Fair Speedway in Spencer, Iowa. The County Fair Speedway going to be the place to be on Monday the 20th, Tuesday the 21st, and Wednesday the 22nd for the 250K Challenge. And for more information, to check up the updated schedule and how to order your pay-per-view events, log on to imca.tv. That's imca.tv, where America comes to watch racing.